windows outside were moving, but he didn't feel any breeze in here. It was just hot. And maybe it was a bird, it was something white. And then, although he knew he wasn't supposed to in worship, he turned. And the man stood in the place where the door should be. And he had the white and red paint on. And his scalp was shaved except for a band down the middle with a white feather in it. And Benjamin knew that the scream in his head was just in his head. And that the room was silent. And in that split second, when you know everything, he knew that his mother and the others would sit and worship silently. And he felt the dark eyes of the man, and he saw how he held his bow as if it was almost a part of him. And he made a gesture, and now there were five of them standing across the back of the room. And then he made a gesture, and they all sat down. They leaned their bows against the back wall, and they sat down. And after a while, Benjamin's father offered his hand to the man next to him, and then he stood up. And he walked toward the Abenaki with his hand up. And then he looked over at Benjamin, and he gave a little smile and said, as if to say, well, come on, son. And Benjamin knew that he and Sarah were to go to their house, where visitors always came, and serve the bread and cheese. So he did. And Robert Nesbitt, who had come down to Canada from Scotland, knew some French, and it turned out that the chief Abenaki knew some French too. They had had many allies. And the chief said, oh yes, we surrounded the building and we planned to kill those within, but when we saw that there were no weapons, there was no need. And then he made a gesture, and he got Robert Nesbitt to explain that he was now to get everyone to go back across to the meeting house, and he took that white feather that Benjamin had seen and asked that it be put above the door in a certain position. He said, well, our people will know, you see, that this is a place of peace. You will not be troubled. And as silently as they came, they left. And you know, that's what happened. In the years remaining of the war, that village stood as it was. And Benjamin, well, he never did get to New York City, but he didn't mind. Okay, I am going to do... Okay, this is a story that I wrote, and it has had several titles. And now I'm just calling it Carolina Honor Code. Have you ever, do you remember exactly what you wore at some long ago time? I do in this case. When I arrived in Chapel Hill to enroll in the University of North Carolina, I had on, and I have no picture of this, I had on a rust-colored sheath, self-belt, scoop neck, long over jacket, of dark brown suede pumps and clip-on gold earrings. I looked good where I came from. And what met my eye? That afternoon with the sun soft on the old brick building. In the air, Carolina unbelievable soft. What met my eye were co-eds, pastel-clad to a woman. They wore clinched-in waists, extended skirts held out by several petticoats and ballerina. And they said things like, it meant hello. The next morning, one of them kindly took me to the cafeteria for breakfast. I walked down the line with my tray, and there next to my eggs appeared something white and glutinous. My companion said helpfully, "It's grits." But more than the food, there were other things in those first days at Carolina. One of them was the honor code. Oh, I had read about it conscientiously in the material sent ahead, but now the impact was increased by impressive seniors. The honor code enunciated the commitment that there would be no plagiarism and no interfering with the grading process, but it meant much more than that. You can read it still on the website of the university. It meant that every member of this community committed to keeping it the special place it was. There would be no monitoring of exams, but we were enrolled. I was, certainly. You see, you must turn your mind back here. Some of you may have read about it. This was the 50s. No student had the remotest experience of being treated as an adult. Certainly, if you were a woman student. But now here we were. We were it. I read of student courts, students writing of the code, student advocates, it was enough to startle you. And then, of course, there was the life of the dorm. I had gotten to know some of those co-eds, and I liked them, even though they did strange things. They drank Coke for breakfast, and they would sit for hours playing bridge when you could be out doing something real. And then, of course, there were the rules in the dorm. Unlike the grown-up honor code, there we were. No man had ever darkened the second floor of my dorm. And indeed, when I was told I was to be in at a certain time, this was not a matter of signing in and out. This was someone standing there to see that you were indeed there. The only time I really ran into trouble was when I had been out hanging out with a gay friend. We both thought that was a little bit funny. Although there was nothing much funny about being gay in the 50s that I could see. In any event, if you wanted to be away overnight, then you had to have a letter. Better it be signed by a Mrs., like an elderly cousin of my father's in Raleigh. But through it all shone the honor code and what it said about us. Well, Carolina was on the quarter system, so the first exams came up pretty soon. And I gathered for one of them in the now familiar, oh, I didn't tell you, I had been cast in my first Playmaker play. There was a lot to be happy about. I was going out with a delicious sounding man who was flatteringly perplexed by me. I couldn't believe my luck. But now the exam. We sat there, lounging. We were actors after all. And in came Kai Jurgensen, the instructor, and one voice rang out, "Kai, you won't be cruel." And he laughed, and he started handing out blue books, and Kai, erudite, a lover of the suggestive, quick talking. He got to the door, He turned back. He raised two nicotine-stained fingers towards us and said, "I'm leaving. You can cheat now." You know, I can feel it still. I wrote frantically, I dropped my blue book, and I got out of there. Now, the first thing that I put on this piece was, "Are the young hopelessly naive?" But you know something? I don't think that's the right name. I think the name is more like, if you occupy a position of authority, you are cynical at our peril. What that man did was wrong. And you know something? I wish I had told him so.